Hi guys, I'm here to talk to you today about the first lesson I learned in QA and about testing, and it was the most important lesson, really, when you get down to it, because it's all about mindset. All right. Uh, when I first started testing, the thing that happened to me was I was working at Texas Instruments with the calculator division, and basically the first thing that happened to me was I was basically dumped down in front of a calculator emulator. It was a 4-bit microprocessor, one of the scientifics, and it had, I believe, 16 pages of memory. Each of those were like 256 bytes, so it was not really a beefy sort of thing. Anyways, they asked me to find a critical bug in the software that was installed on the calculator there, or, get out. So it was pretty much a put up or shut up situation. Anyways, I managed to do that mostly by listening to what they were telling me about the calculator and what they weren't telling me about the calculator. So, like I said, it was this 4-bit micro with these many pages and things like that. So it was one of those things. Why are they telling me this, and why is this important? They then walked me through. It had like 3 or 4 different applications. One was, I believe, a polynomial equation solver. Another one was a matrix math solver, and then there were several other applications. But I looked at all of those different things and how many numbers they stored and how big the numbers they were that they stored. And I realized that this matrix solver was kind of like the big daddy when it came to the memory, because it was, you could do like 4x4s by 4x4s or something like that, which means that, a whole matrix could take up a whole page almost, if you keep at the correct level of precision that was allowed on those particular numbers. So I realized that they're probably stashing various different values and flags various places around here because in my experience, I'd done numerical analysis as part of my mathematics education, but I'd also sort of knew how computers worked beforehand. Not a lot of other people in the department that I was working at, they were not really familiar with that beyond the development staff, so the testing staff was not real familiar with that idea. So I thought, all right, well, let's take a look at some of these phase transitions in between these applications, especially with the datas for all these things that save and persist between states as filled up as we possibly can. So I found a set of values. I basically was like, let's think about the most sort of like degenerate irrational numbers we can fill in here so that they'll fill everything up and can't possibly be reduced. Put those in every value. I went from the matrix solver to the equation solver and then back to the matrix solver, and ta-da, I got myself a garbled screen, and then I tried to navigate away, and I bricked the test unit. We had to, reflash it and all that sort of stuff. So hooray, critical bug found, right? I then moved on and worked at TI for another 4 years, but the point is that I was able to find something no one else was able to find there, mostly just because of different mindset, different experience, and I was not sort of in the mental boxes that everybody else was in there. A lot of them were sort of the, I'm testing boundaries of functions, not necessarily boundaries of applications, because everybody, when they're developing applications, they sort of stick within the box of the application themselves, right? Because that's sort of the only way you can actually keep it all inside your head, especially on something that's complex as a 4-bit micro, where you're going to have a gigantic map of flags and all kinds of stuff that you're stashing in various different places. And with multiple developers, stepping on each other's foot is kind of going to be an inevitability. So you have to look and see where the other people around you are not looking and what they find important, and what they tell you is really going to tell you what they find important and where they've already looked. All right. It's what they're not telling you about the system is where you're going to find all the bugs, right? So there are other things when you actually end up getting into QA and doing a lot of testing that's going to be sort of the same thing, but not directly associated with actual product that you're testing. It's more like there are institutional hurdles, or there are procedural hurdles and other things like that that are similarly like a mental box that people put themselves in that prevent them from actually being effective testers. This sort of gets down to the fact that the reason we have these mental boxes is because they're copes, okay? They're a way for people to deal with not really being able to mentally deal with the situation being the way it is. Like I said, with a lot of these really complicated programs, you really can't fit more than just one little module in your head at a time. That's kind of why we do this whole modular programming thing as programmers, because I sure as heck can't fit most of the programs that I write. When you really get down to all of it, you can't fit all of that complexity into your head at one time. You have to break it down into chunks so that you have an idea of, well, this is just sort of like the general idea, and then you are able to like laser focus in on each little thing and make one thing do one thing well, right? But that means all the points those integrate together is going to be the weak link, and that's where you really have to concentrate your testing, is those sorts of boundaries. Let's see. What is we got here? So anyways, you have to shed those sort of boxes in your head to actually be a productive tester. And this gets down to when you're trying to hire a tester, okay? You have to check for this mindset, and most importantly, that they don't have the same mindset as you. They don't already have the same copes in their own head installed as you, especially when it comes to procedural things and a lot of these things that people call, culture at companies, which, like I said, they're really just sort of copes for weird situations that don't necessarily still exist, and that a lot of times fresh air sort of clears out the Augean stables, so to speak, and you actually can not only improve your product, but actually improve your organization through QA by just people asking, why are we doing this? This seems stupid, That's a very common thing whenever you hire new QAs that are actually skilled. They don't just test your product, they test your process, and they test the people implementing the process, because if you really want to get down to it, the best way to make a quality product is to have quality people making it. And there's no easy answer to that question other than you need people to be better. And that is a big can of worms that is not really easy for people to get done correctly. Because like I said in earlier episodes, people really have these big ego investments in who they are today. They have this big identity built around themselves, which is really just a series of copes for weaknesses that they had earlier in life, or dealing with situations that were unfair to them, or for whatever reason they have these adaptations that serve them once that may still be serving them but may not be serving them, and that you sort of have to constantly question these mental models and make sure that they still serve you and they're still useful. And if you are hiring only for people who are just like you, who have the same kind of fit, as they say in companies, they say you are hired for resume, you're fired for fit. Well, a lot of times companies are hiring for fit nowadays, and I'm telling you, that's not exactly the smartest thing. Sometimes you need people who don't fit in just right, because fit doesn't happen by magic. People always have to sort of figure out where they fit into an organization, and they adapt themselves, because you have to realize everybody has their own copes from some other organization. They have their own mental models that don't necessarily apply to where that you work now, and vice versa. It's that sort of winnowing process where they get rid of the stuff that isn't useful to them, and you get rid of the stuff that's no longer useful to you via that interaction with a new person that actually improves your process. So that's sort of where I wanted to go with this. It's the same sort of concept in a lot of different philosophy. Probably the most familiar to most people is the Christian idea of dying to self to serve a transcendent sacred. And really in the corporate environment, it is all about putting aside your ego investment in a lot of different concepts so that you can start pulling in the direction, in the goals of the company, So just keep that in mind whenever you're trying to both hire and trying to test. Is don't get too caught up in any of this stuff. Don't take it too serious. Don't really get too upset about anything happening in the whole process, and just realize I'm just going to do what it takes to get the job done. Focus on the goal, laser focus, and you will never fail as either a QA or people who use QAs in your organization. All right, guys, that's all I got for tonight. Have a nice day.